Well, hey, folks, it's John Edwards, host of the Just a Guy on the Pew podcast, and I'm so happy to be here with you in this first live interview session. We've been talking about doing this for a while, and thanks to our generous patrons, we've been able to do this, to get the equipment and the things we need to be able to do what we've talked about, interview some of the best presenters and Catholic men in the church about what's going on in their lives, getting to know them a little bit better, and just really asking them for their insight into where we are in the world as men today, how to become better men, and really just spend some time getting to know these folks. You know, it could be funny. I've been the guy in the audience to where you see these people on stage and it seems like they've got everything figured out and they must have no issues in their life and that they must have come out of the womb with the Bible and preaching the Word of God. Well, I can assure you as a guy that spends some time on stage, that's not the case. And most of these other guys would tell you the same thing. So we want to use these interview times to just invite these wonderful men of God on and just speak to them about things that have gone in their life and what they've learned, and just try to see what we can learn from maybe some of the issues they've had in their life, but also some of the great successes. And I can't tell you how excited I am to kick off this whole thing. Like when I asked God, who do you want first? A smile came to my face. He's one of my best friends in the world, and I was just very blessed to work with this next guest, our first guest, Bill Donaghy from the Theology of the Body Institute and from the Rise Challenge and so many other things. I've just been so blessed to have him as a friend and as a mentor and as a guide in this world. So without further ado, I am, like I said, if you could tell by the smile on my face, I'm giddy just to have him on here just to spend time with my friend. But I'm going to bring on Bill Donaghy right now. Hey, Bill, how are you doing?
Oh, good, John. I'm blessed for your asking. I'm so happy to be part of this as well. It's good to see you, brother, and I'm excited to just chat and go wherever the Lord wants us to go. So great to
That's
be
right.
here.
Yeah, that's what I loved about this first interview is it's like, man, it's just me talking to my buddy. You know, it's not a lot of stuff
Exactly.
planned out, but just a conversation of wherever the Lord takes us. So, but Bill, I mean, I know a lot of people who know who you are. They've seen you on the Rise Challenge. You know, I was blessed to work with you on that on the sales
Mm,
side for a couple of years, and so they've seen some of your testimony there. If they've seen the challenge, if not, they've probably seen you, or maybe even gone to one of your retreats or courses up at the TOB Institute.
hmm
But I wanted to start off a little bit by just allowing you to tell people about yourself. I mean, you've got a tremendous story, like everybody in life. You've had your ups and downs, you've had your struggles, and the one thing that has always, I would say, drawn me to you, like the one thing that I admire so much about you is you're a person that doesn't just teach something. You're not just saying here's a history book and learn your lessons and go on. You're somebody that applies this to their life. I mean, Angela and I have been blessed to have you down to our house and just to break bread with our family and spend a lot of time together. And I've
mm.
seen in you a guy that actually lives out what he teaches. Now, I know you're also a humble guy, so you may get red and may,
Yeah.
may blush a little in this, but you're just one of these people I've seen that's like that guy. This isn't a lesson for somebody else. This is a journey that he goes on himself every single day, and he allows himself to live it. So, can you tell us a little bit about just where you come from and some of your struggles and stuff like that, and then we can dive into
Yeah.
everything else.
John, yeah, thanks. I mean, first off, brother, I, you know, I love the ministry you're doing because it's real and raw. And, I've been a lay evangelist for probably 20 years now.
Hmm.
And you're asking questions that it takes a long time for people to come to the maturity of. We cannot separate our faith as if it's some sort of job, like we clock in, clock out. And I mean, I came to realize that just through the blessed broken road, that the Lord puts you on, that you can't just say words, especially as a teacher, theology professor, evangelist, whatever. Um, this is life. This isn't just, a job. And it's humbling, right, to be on this road. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, I work for the Institute, I'm a senior lecturer, senior because of the gray hair, I think. But
It looks awesome on you, buddy. I'll tell you that
oh
much.
my gosh. But being an educator and a teacher of this tremendous teaching theology of the body, which is all about who we are as human beings, male and female, called to love, the whole Catholic theology of sexuality and life. How could I possibly like just teach it and not have it like right in my face? Like, dude, you have to live this.
Yeah.
So for me, it's always been the Lord's put this in my heart, and He's also said, this is for you. And you're the greatest school. You're a teacher, but your school is your family, the family you grew up in, the family you're presently called to, my wife, Rebecca, and our 4 children. Um, so for me, like teaching, ministering, giving retreats, talks, courses, it's constantly like coming out of the school of my family where the Lord's
Mhm.
doing his work. And yeah, it's been quite a ride. I praise God for the work that I'm doing. And John, I know you say the same, like for the work you're doing
Sure.
this ministry, because like it's so interconnected. We can sort of separate. It's like now I put my this hat on, but
Sure.
if you're going to be real, authentically Catholic, a man of faith, it's constant, right? So, I often say, like when I teach, that the Lord's given us 3 books in our lives: the
Mm.
book of creation, the books of Scripture, the book of the Bible, and the book of our own life. And these are all really interwoven, right? So, I just as a husband and a father for 17 years now, uh, I go back in my story. So I think about, and I think all of your listeners, if we're talking about healing and identity and finding out what we're called to be, spend some time. Like, I love your question, John. Like, where'd you come from, basically, right? Going
Yeah.
back into our history. We got to do that a lot. We come to a point in our faith where we really take it seriously. The Lord invites us to go back, I think, into our family of origin and like think about that. I have you in a place of grace right now, and that grace can go all the way back to your womb, to the womb experience, to that time when you grew up in your family and your father wound and your mother wound. So
Mm.
the short answer to your question about like where'd you come from is just I came from a family that was Catholic. I came from a mother and father who were married in the church, but it was a little bit one-sided, and that family, when I was a young teenager, started to crumble and fall apart. So I'm a son of divorced parents, and when you think about what I teach and what I tell others about the Catholic vision of marriage and family today, it's an invitation into my wound. Like it was sundered when I was young. So my faith story is woven um, by like sometimes broken threads, and that's all good. Like the Lord's in it. And I've learned through that being a son of divorced parents, more empathy, more compassion. I think it's
Mm.
taken me on a unique path of really like the hunger for what I felt as a teenager when my parents divorced. Bring them back together again, Lord. Lord, bring my mother and father back together again. My awakening to faith really happened then when things fell apart, which doesn't happen a lot, John.
Mhm. Yeah.
Suffering sheds light. Like C.S. Lewis says that he whispers to us in our pleasures, he shouts to us in our sufferings. Um, and I looked at like where I am today as a teacher and an evangelist is because I saw the wound, felt it, and cried out to God, like, "Can you heal this?" So now my whole
Mm.
mission in life as a teacher is the same prayer that I cried out as a 15-year-old.
Wow.
Lord, bring them back together again. Maybe it's not my mother and father, but it's man and woman. It's it's fathers to sons, it's mothers to daughters. Like I just feel like, Lord, you broke my heart and made me
Mm.
cry out for union and communion in the human family, my family. Now you got me on a road that's not disconnected from that. I'm still saying the same thing. I'm still praying the same prayer. Lord, bring us back together again. My own heart, my wife, my children, and then I want to teach others like this is what we're made for. We're made for union and communion. And I love, John, that you've got that on your heart too, that it's about
Yeah.
marriage and family as the nucleus of society and culture. If we can get this right, if we can be real good husbands
Hmm.
and fathers, then it's going to ripple out into the culture, right? Awesome. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just a microwave version of
No, it's
something
amazing.
from
That's
the past that's present.
sure, and that's what I love about you, Bill. Like you are a living testimony that your circumstances don't define who you are, right?
Mm,
Like if you look at your life and you say, okay, I came from divorce, and I know that you've had some other struggles
yeah. Oh,
in
yeah.
your life that we haven't brought up yet, but you've had just like everybody, you've had tremendous struggles, but you haven't let those define you. Like the fact that you have gone directly into that, right? Like you haven't let those things, those pains, those wounds define who you are. You've said, no, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to be better than that. I'm not going to let that define who I am. And I'm going to become who God has called me to be. And it's so beautiful. Like as you were talking, I thought, man, like he's in the place he's supposed to be. All these attacks on the family, and that's what the devil is trying to do in our lives all the time, right? He wants to destroy the family. I mean, that's his main purpose. All you got to do is look around the culture and see
Exactly.
abortion and divorce and gender dysphoria and transhumanism and all of this stuff. And it's like, it's all directed at, I want to destroy the family. And there was attempts in your upbringing and in your life, whether it was with your parents when you were younger, or even in your marriage with some difficulties that you've had to go through, that with infertility, if you don't mind me bringing that up.
We will talk about it. Yeah.
And but you have said, like, I'm not going to let that define me. Like, I'm going to be a gift. I'm going to be what maybe I didn't have at certain times in my life. I'm going to be that for others, and that's what I love so much. Like, that I find so, just I don't even know the word I want to use, but like, just so attractive about you is that you say, I'm going to be better, right? Like, I'm going to be different. I'm not going to let these things control who I am or the direction of my life. I realize that God has a plan for me, and through all of these sufferings, beauty has come out of it. I mean, we mentioned infertility, but you have 4 wonderful adopted, just beautiful children that are amazing. Like, I love every one of them like they're my own from just your videos and pictures. But like that's the thing. Like, that's what speaks to me so much about your story, is that you haven't let it define you. And a lot of times we see men, we get caught up in our circumstances, and we kind of throw our hands up in the air and say, well, I can't help it. This is just the hand I was dealt, or, this is, I can hear it in myself. I love my father. We had a great relationship, but there was obviously some father wounds there too. And I see them come out sometimes when responding to my children and things like that. But Bill, like, that's what I find so amazing about you, is just the way that you live your life, that it's so genuine, and you haven't let those things just define who you are and how you're going to live your life.
Well, John, thanks for that. But man, we're all in it, right? I mean,
Sure.
Thank you, but we're all in it. To me, this is the light that keeps dawning. And I just turned 51.
Yeah, happy birthday, by the way. A couple days
ago. Thanks, brother. Thank you. Yeah. So, half a century. It's pretty wild to think about that. But I still feel, sometimes you still feel like that little kid under the Father's gaze, like still learning, still growing. But I have discovered that through that, that kind of like early wound of that, the struggles that it creates, finding your identity, finding out who you are when your family is sundered, going through the crosses that the Lord puts in your path. We got to get rid of this idea that I shouldn't be suffering. Like, why is it so hard? Lord, where's the happily ever after? Like, I love you. And don't you want me to be happy? It's funny, like, we're in a broken world, John, right? I mean, it is so clearly abundant. We're in a fallen, broken world. Yeah. And the amazing thing that we come to discover is the things we run away from sometimes, or try to bury, or the things that make us bitter. Like, man, why did this happen to me? And I don't deserve this, and I deserve better. It's like the Lord is trying to tell us, look, it's a broken world. And now these are from the shards of that brokenness. I'm making tools. I'm going to make these. He can do anything, right? I'm going to use the broken bits now to carve away and shape you into this awesome man. I'm going to allow this to happen in my permissive will. I'm going to let this unfold. Trust me here. And I'm discovering this every day, right?
Sure.
It's like, trust me. Don't run from the suffering. It's the very chisel and hammer that I'm using to make you into a masterpiece, if you just trust me. And it's wild, right? We sometimes like, no, it shouldn't be like this, right? It's supposed to be a garden of roses, and no, it's not. Where'd you get that idea? I think
That's right.
I think Jesus said something in the Gospels about suffering and a cross or something. Is there something about
That's
that?
Right. The whole world will hate you stuff and all.
Something about picking up the cross every day. Yeah, every day. So It's funny. It's also like, it's been called the via negativa, right? By the negative way, we discover the positive. John Paul II talks about this, right? He says, like, we all have this ache for a beginning that was beautiful. Sometimes we only see it by he says, like, the negatives, like like photographic negatives, where I see the positive, like, oh, but to get there, you got to learn how to love. And so every circumstance in your life, you mentioned the infertility. When I met my beautiful wife, meeting Rebecca was just one of those great moments. And some people know the story, but I was doing mission work. She was a missionary in Northeast Philadelphia at a homeless shelter, and we met over a dumpster. She was throwing garbage out. That's when our eyes first met. It's a beautiful, hilarious story. That's where we met over garbage. But like, here we were getting transformed by the Lord, literally learning about theology of the body. this beautiful teaching of John Paul II. And when we got married, we're like, we're gonna, we live in this contraceptive culture, this abortion obsessed culture, self-centered culture. And we're like, Lord, we know your vision, we know your mission. We want to, we want to have a bunch of kids and live this vision by your grace, Lord. And then boom, within the first year of our marriage, we're infertile.
Yeah.
And again, it's a moment where it's like, okay, hold up. Like, wait, I know we're both sinful, we're selfish, but we actually want to live the vision. Like, we know your vision by your grace. We found it. We want to live it. Why are you like, what? This is a custom made cross here.
Yeah.
My wife's been dreaming of being a mommy since the 4th grade. And I can't give that to her now. So, again, there's these moments that, and might sound trite, but it's like this suffering can make you bitter or make you better, right?
Sure.
It's okay to feel bitter. It's okay to be angry. And we had some dark years. Like, Lord, what? Like, we want to do what you want us to do, but we can't do it because of the brokenness of nature. But even in that, the vegan negativa, right? The vegan negativa, the negative way, showing the positive, it stirs the hunger for life more. You don't take things for granted. Life is gift, and it's like, wow. And you get this awareness that, again, children, you can feel that bitterness, right? Like, we should have children. We deserve children, but they're never to be grasped at. Rebecca and I went through this path, right? Of, no, they're a gift. It's all gift. What we can't grasp, we're going to mess up God's plan. Okay, it's like Jesus take the wheel, right? Like the old song.
Yeah.
Jesus take the wheel. And the moment we're able to like let go a little bit, like, you've helped me before in the brokenness. You've taken me down. You've shaped me. Lord, have your way with me. Which, as you know, John, is a dangerous prayer.
Yes,
Lord, have your way with me. It's like, watch out, friends.
Yeah, he's like, hold my beer.
Yeah. It's like, okay. But then boom, boom, boom. Gifts are coming. And we have this crazy family of four adopted children, all basically 2 years apart. And now it's a madhouse of love. And even there, like, your children are gifts. Your children are also part of the tools in the toolbox of your family that shapes you and to becoming a saint. So, like, back to your original question, like, this life thing, your life with Angela and your kids, my life with Rebecca and our kids, this is not separated from anything else. It's all woven. And it's, if we can let our hands off a little bit, like, Lord, every day, right? What are you doing here? What do you want me to do? Be open. Okay. And then what? Let me have my way with you. I love you, and I'm going to make you bigger and better than you ever thought you could be by my grace. I'm going to shape you into somebody who's going to, if you focus on just letting me love you, letting me work in your life and your circumstances, even when they seem like total crap, garbage, nuts, like, what? Why? I'm going to radiate something out of you, a power that you can't even imagine yet. And you have no idea who it's going to touch. So that's why I try not to look too much out there, but just like, okay, what are you doing in here? What are you doing through this? Yeah. What's happening in this little circle?
And that's something like, I love that you said that, because it's something that I've been thinking about the last couple of days, just in conversations. I did a talk for a conference, and it was basically the theme that you see a lot in men's ministry, like battle cries and pick up your stuff and run headfirst into the fight. And what you've just said is something that you and I have talked about so much. It's like, as men, because we want to have this sort of heroic, like, I'm going to go out and save the day, but we place all that on the exterior, and we don't spend any time on the interior where the true battle really is. Like, we feel like, okay, I got to go fight this war, but it's like, what kind of warrior, what kind of soldier, to use that sort of language, are you going to be if you haven't even won the battle in your own heart? Like, won the battle in your own soul, right? Like, to know that I have wounds. I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to heal the wounds of others, or try to do this stuff and carry the flag of the gospel and of Christ, which is a great intention. But to do that without first, like, delving into what needs fixed in here, right? What's disoriented in here.
Exactly.
And a lot of times we do that as men. We're like, I'm going to go join every, like, Knights of Columbus group and every men's group, and I'm going to fill my week full of everything Christian, so that I can feel like I'm, what I mean? I don't mean to, I'm not
terrible
knocking that.
Yeah.
But just to do everything so I can go out and like really live for Christ. It's like, no, Christ wants you to know who you are and know that you're his. And then once you figured out those things, you've dealt with those wounds, like with your infertility, you could have easily said, kids aren't from me, they're for me. Right? Like they're for me, right? Like I can't have kids, but kids are from me. And that's not what you said. You basically said, Lord, if this is your will, like, even though I don't like it, and even though it's tough and it hurts and it's unexpected.
You got to say that out loud. Yeah.
Right. Like this is something that we still are all in on your plan, and we know that you have something in front of us. So like, it just reminded me that when you said that, is so often as men, we want to we just put on the exterior and go instead of saying like, let me dive into my own heart. So like, how do you do that in your own life? Like, how do you, for men out there that are struggling maybe with infertility or as being fathers, what are things you put into practice in your life to help really heal that interior stuff going on before you go out and project on the exterior?
Yeah, gosh, John, good stuff.
Is that a good question?
Yeah.
Have I confused you well? I'm just kidding.
No. I'm a constant student, right? I mean, constant student, learning in the school of life and the school of the family. So, but one of the things that you were just talking about, like, the do, and I got this, and I'm going to make it happen, and I'm going to, I was thinking of Dr. Peter Kraft, and I know he's a fan of, you're a fan of his, and I'm a huge fan since I was a teenager of Dr. Peter Kraft, and you just got to interview him recently. I had a little holy jealousy there, John. Yeah, I had a little holy jealousy.
I got to tell you, he has a sense of humor that is just hilarious.
Oh, he does. Well, here's my point. He once said, the soundtrack of hell, the theme song of hell, I did it my way. Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm like, dang. Well, that's the thing, and you may have the best intentions. I'm part of these 6 Bible studies and I do all this. Meanwhile, your wife and kids are like, great, where are you? We need you here. Like, this is the primary vocation.
Yeah.
But and it can become such a self-reliant thing. It can become such like this look what I did. And again, we can delude ourselves. We really can. It's kind of that spiritual pride that creeps in. It's easy to get lost in that activity. But the greatest thing we can do is that vulnerability, is that opening up and letting the Father have his way. So how do I, what are some ways I try to do that? Every day, I look at the crucifix. We got crucifixes everywhere, right? Our church, any good Catholic house, we got crucifixes in the bedroom. We got crucifixes in the living room, by the front door. And I try to look at the crucifix because if, the Vatican II document talks about Jesus Christ fully reveals man to himself and makes his supreme calling clear. That's Gaudium et Spes 22, I think.
Sure.
John Paul II loved that quote. So I look at this body, this nearly naked body of a man, the God-man, arms wide open, pinned to the cross, letting the Father have his way with him. If I could look at that crucifix every morning and spend just a few quiet minutes just holding a crucifix in my hand, looking at the crucifix, there it is, in the very language of his body. That's it. Bishop Fulton Sheen used to say the crucifix is every man's autobiography.
Wow.
Take that, right? Like, put that in your holy hour and smoke it. The crucifix is every man's autobiography. So ultimately, I don't have to look any further. Just look at him.
Yeah. What's
he doing? What is he doing? He's being completely vulnerable and open to the Father. And it might seem like, well, wait, you have divine powers. You could literally do anything in the world. You could just blast through and redeem the world with strength and might and power and robes of glory flowing behind you, But it's like it's almost so counterintuitive. Like, wait, what? That's success? That's victory? Okay, there's no other way. St. Faustina said this, right? If there was another way other than suffering, Jesus would have shown us.
Wow,
but it was suffering. So I look to the Lord in the crucifix. I look to my great mentors like Peter Kraft, great spiritual authors like Bishop Fulton Sheen, John Paul II, Saint Joseph, the language of his body, his quiet, obedient heart, but his strength too, his virility, his closeness to Mary. So I look at these other men and their incredible devotion, their intellect, their passion, their creativity, and just like how they live, I look at my own father too. And I know this, depending on who's listening in here, everybody's
Sure.
got a father, and my dad's not perfect. But I look at my dad, and I learned even through like the divorce, through the two strokes he suffered uh,
Yeah.
soon after in his late 30s. I mean, he was completely immobilized. I look at the suffering of my father and how it took him down to his knees, and he's been on his knees for the last 40 years,
Yeah.
letting the Lord like be his rock. And then I'm like, that's it. That's what I got to do. So I got to constantly be in a posture of openness and learning. And from that, right, when I drink it in through my prayer every day, then I can launch out of that space of looking and listening, and then I can start like the doing. I can't flip it around, like get up and start rocking it, right? No, first just spend time being, listening, looking.
Yeah.
Um, real quick before we transition, John, to another question.
Sure.
My grandfather was like the quintessential John Wayne quiet man. And he was a man of very few words and emotion. And when my dad took on a job at 19 at the same public service gas and electric that he worked at for 30 years, um, my grandpa said to my dad in the workplace, this was his fatherly advice: keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut.
Mm.
That's hardcore, right?
It is.
But as I go into the book of my life and look at my father and my grandfather, because man, there's so much rich, fertile soil there. Look at that stuff. Spiritually speaking, keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut. Before the Father, it's kind of important. Open yourself up, eyes and ears open, mouth shut. Don't, I'm going to do
Yeah.
this. I'm going to do that. This is my opinion. I think this. Hold
Right.
on. Just wait a sec. Keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut for a little bit. Isn't that Job's experience in scripture? Job is like schooled by the Father. I put my hand over my mouth. I will speak no more. It's
That's
like,
right. That's
it's
right.
kind of good advice. I just find out, that like we're going to be more fertile, more productive, more dynamic if we can first be a little bit more receptive. Then it's not
Hmm.
so much my idea as it is going to be his idea, which is always better.
Sure. Which
Always
which
better.
is which is what he wants, right? God gives us grace, but we have to cooperate with it. That's the thing.
Right.
We grace is thrown around so much. I actually did a podcast on it the other day. The word, and we assume that everybody knows what that means and where it comes from and all of that. But
Mm.
really, we don't ever talk about cooperating with it. You had a choice in your life in that moment of infertility, right? When you figured that out, is I can either be angry and blame God and turn
Right.
away from Him, or I can cooperate with what seems to be His plan, which has now brought you this wonderful family that you wouldn't trade for anything in the world, I know,
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
and it's allowed you to become the man that God is created you to be. Oftentimes you and I talk privately, and I'm not going to share a lot of that information, but I will say you have the same struggles everybody else has, and
Oh my
sometimes even
gosh.
a few more because of the adoptions and things like that that go along
That's
with it. And
right.
like I said, I don't want to dive too far into that because I know it's personal stuff, but
Hmm.
like you deal with those in such a way, like God has given you the grace to be able to handle that. Like oftentimes when you and I talk, I'll say to you, Bill, like it doesn't surprise me because you do such great work for building up the family through the TOB and just the way that you live your life, that it makes sense that the devil would attack you through some of those issues in the family and stuff, because
Yeah.
here you are trying to apply this great teaching that you're teaching everybody else to your life. And the devil doesn't want that, right? He doesn't want us
No.
to
No.
cooperate with God's grace.
No.
He wants to throw monkey wrenches in everything. And so, you know, you're talking about this, that I think a lot of men, we're at that point where a lot of men struggle, right? Like, I want to cooperate with God's grace. I want to
Hmm.
surrender, as you're saying, everything you said, like looking to the crucifix, seeing Jesus with his arms open, being quiet and listening. Like, those are all things that are hard for men. If you look around at the world today, we have a whole world full
Yeah.
of guys that are basically egotistical. I don't need anything or anybody. I'm a one man army, and really we're these broken children. Like, our mutual friend of ours, Mike Bishop, sent me a picture one time, and it had this side view of a guy's head, from and you could see his face. He was smiling like this from the side, but then where his brain was this scared little boy up against the
Mm.
wall in the fetal position.
Oh my
And
gosh,
I
yeah.
think that's where we find so many men today, is that we want to be these great men. We want to be able to do these things that the Lord calls us to. But like, we have that trouble of that trust and surrendering and cooperating with God's grace. I mean, look at what we looked at in the debate a couple of weeks ago. You know, you and I were talking about that for a few minutes before we got on here. But here are
Mm-hmm,
two
mm-hmm.
men, like our two choices for who's going to be the president, the next president of the United States, can't even have a civil conversation with each other. Right? We've lost so much as men that it's become about us and power and what we want and everything besides what God calls us to, which you
Yeah,
teach so brilliantly, which is to be a gift. Like to
yeah,
offer up any part of my life for that of another, whether it's my children or my wife or my friends or anyone that God puts in front of me. And so,
yeah.
Bill, like, how do we, how do we get through this? How do we become these men that God wants us to be? Like, how do we get past the fear of surrender and the fear of losing ourselves? Because I think that's what part of it is. A guy thinks, well, if I give my life to God, I got to give up control, and I don't get to do what I want anymore, and I don't get to be who I
Yeah.
am. And
Mm-hmm.
oddly enough, it's like no one knows who you're supposed to be better than God, right? But
Yeah.
yet we
Yeah.
refuse that. So, like, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? Because I mean, we're in a crazy place as men out there today with all this toxic masculinity and everything else out in the world. And then when you see the men who are going to lead the free world, they're sort of exemplifying this thing. No matter who you're voting
Yeah.
for, this isn't a
It's
political
crazy.
statement. It's just evidence at
Right.
hand. How do we combat this, and
Yeah.
how do we start to turn towards back what the Lord wants us to become?
Yeah, man. I'm so glad this is such a shallow, easy conversation, John. That we're just you're throwing me
I
softballs.
don't. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't
Softballs.
lob softballs here.
No,
You
like
have 3 minutes.
I
Go ahead.
think
I'm just kidding.
yeah. Ding. Somebody said that watching that debate, and again, God bless them both, was looking at two boys with deep father wounds. Somebody
Yeah.
said that. Like we're seeing here, um, we just have a lot of disintegrated men who don't. It's hard. I mean, we have to learn that civility, that kindness. We have to learn patience. Yes, we have to also use our virility and strength in the face of evil or duplicity. We have to be strong, absolutely, but we can always have compassion and kindness too. How do these dance together? We're such a bifurcated world. It's like, no, it's one or the other.
Mm,
Justice
yeah.
Scalia had that great line that's been coming up with the recent Supreme Court, Justice Ginsburg dying and the
Sure.
whole thing. So Scalia's line, I don't attack people, I attack ideas. And that man, Justice Scalia, could have a friendship with Justice Ginsburg for so many years, an authentic friendship, and yet disagree ideologically, like
Sure.
crazy, because there's basic human kindness. I mean, here's the thing. How do we do this? How do we integrate ourselves and become virtuous men
Yeah.
of that basic human kindness? I just, as you were talking there, John, we have these images of men who have the armor up and the strength, and that's what leads. And then we
Hmm.
have the vulnerability
Sure.
that Jesus exemplified on the cross. Like, it's wild how different these can be. So I had this image as we were talking of the centurion at the foot of the cross. So here's a Roman soldier standing at the foot of the vulnerable one, right? The God man, the perfect man on the cross. There's the man, the icon for all men, stripped naked on a cross, completely helpless, so to speak. And here's the centurion with armor, right? Helmet, spear, pierces Christ. And this is, I think, here's the secret of life for us men. Like Christ, we have to allow ourselves to be pierced.
Hmm.
When that guy, let's say the centurion at the foot of the cross is sort of the icon of toxic masculinity, right? He's the soldier, he's the
Sure.
warrior. When he pierced the heart of Christ, what happens next? Blood and water flows down, washes over this guy literally. I'm thinking of the scene from the Passion of the Christ. Remember that,
Yeah.
John?
Oh yeah.
When
Yeah.
he just and he literally
Yeah.
drops to
Sprays
his
them.
knees. Divine mercy washes over this toxic masculinity. This guy, the soldier piercing Jesus, washes over him, and he drops to his knees. And whoa! And there's the moment of faith. This was the Son of God, and that
Yeah.
guy's life is wrecked. He's destroyed. Right? He's destroyed now. He literally had divine mercy wash over him, literally. And I'm sure he took that armor off, and the rest of his life he was a humble. I can't wait to see that guy's whole story. To learn his
Yeah.
name, to find his whole story.
Oh
The
yeah.
one who pierced him, and then was pierced himself. So I think
Yeah.
we just got to say, okay, every day as a guy, where am I being pierced? Because what happens when we allow our manly hearts to be pierced, it doesn't make us weaker, it makes us stronger, right?
Right.
Our hearts get bigger, and there's an
Yeah.
access point now. So like real practically, come home from work, probably still on a phone call or some emails you didn't get to yet or whatever, and you walk in the door, it's really easy to just keep that thing going. And then you see maybe your wife's in the kitchen and she's got stuff she wants to share. Are you there? Are you allowing her to pierce you,
Sure.
open
Yeah.
you up, and or just like, do you see, like, it's so important to just shift and say, okay, now I've been doing today, now I'm going to
Hmm.
be receiving.
Yeah.
How was your day? And just literally drop it all, drop it all. And you might be coming from some, maybe you just did some amazing thing, you just had some amazing interview, or you just did this great project, and you're like riding high, in the eyes of others because of what you just did, how productive you were. But there's nothing more productive than the conversation heart to heart you're about to have with your beloved.
Right.
Like, what's more important in the light of eternity? What's more important than you being really attentive and allowing yourself to be pierced by your spouse's, whatever it might be? The 4-year-old lost his mind today. Such and such happened, and it might seem like, but I was just doing this amazing thing. I want to tell you all about what I did
Sure.
today.
Start
Like,
beating the chest and yeah,
yeah, but
yeah.
it's like, no, that it's more important to know what's going on in the garden of your wife's heart.
Sure.
By the way, I'm still learning this, right? I'm still learning this. 17 years of marriage, like, still, how do I really just enter into that circle? Because we're living in a world where there's just all these monologues going on,
Yeah.
monologues, like my monologue, my opinion, my agenda, and there's
Yep.
no dialogue. There's no break. To have a dialogue, one has to break open so the other can come in.
Sure.
And when that other can allow themselves to be broken, you get like a bigger,
Sure.
don't, isn't that what we want? Like, I want a bigger, richer, fuller life. Well, it's
Yeah.
only
And
going to
we have
happen
to,
if I, yeah, break down the walls.
yeah. And you have to, that's the thing is we want to win arguments. We don't want to receive things. We don't like, we feel like to get our point across or to be victorious in anything, politics or any sort of discussion,
Hmm.
like we have to force our stuff on the other. And it's always the aggressor, right? With men, it's, I've got to be the aggressor. I've got to be the alpha dog. I've got to walk in their
Mm-hmm.
room and kind of, stand up as tall as I can get, which is maybe 6'9" on a good name for me when I'm on my toes. But, taking that
You
deep
got me
breath.
beat.
That's right. But like just taking that breath, put my chest out and go like I'm the dominant guy in here. And it's such a weight to carry. Like all that junk.
Yeah,
You and I have talked about this so many times
that's
in
too much.
private. Just about like I put all this unnecessary stress all over myself. And then we
Hmm.
go and we look for these opportunities out in the world to where we can go and do the heroic thing, right? Let me go find this act to show everyone what a man I am and all of this. But to your point, like we have that opportunity each and every day. When I'm sitting here getting ready for an interview and my daughter Caitlin walks up and says, "Daddy, I want you to hold me for a minute." And do we go, "Are you too? I'm too busy. Come back later," or do we take that opportunity? Like, and that's
Yeah,
what's so hard for men. But like you said in the beginning of the interview, like Jesus never said it would be easy. And he never
right.
said like, okay, Bill and John, you two you're gonna get on, you're gonna have a martyr's death on this day. No, like you're gonna have a martyr's death every minute of every day, possibly.
Yes, exactly.
If you allow yourself
Yep.
to have it, and the more you allow yourself to have it, the greater your life is going to become because you start to realize, I can, the further that I move away, that allow myself to be taken away from myself and drawn towards others, the closer I grow to Christ, and so like it's just that's what I love having these conversations with you because it is so hard. And I love that you admitted, like, I struggle with this. I teach this all day long. Like,
Oh
you,
gosh, yeah.
you have spent years in what, a 736-page book about being a gift, the theology of the body, all of John Paul II's teachings. And yet you say, and you have the humility, which I think is also key to all of this, to say, I still struggle with it. And even
Oh
though
yeah.
I want to live this, I don't always live this in my life. And that's okay
Right.
too. A lot of times we
Right.
build up
Right.
like this, I failed, I'm never going to be good at this, so I might as well quit. And
Yeah.
and Jesus doesn't say that. Like that's why he gives you that grace that we talked about cooperating with so that you have the strength and the power to do what you're talking about.
And John, it's so counterintuitive. It just seems such a paradox, but we know this. We've heard this intellectually anyway. When I am weak, it is then that I am
I'm
strong.
strong.
Right?
Yep.
When you lay down your life, you will find it. If you give yourself, you'll find yourself. Yeah, yeah, that's a great quote. I love that quote. Oh yeah, St.
Yeah.
Paul, man, awesome.
That's what he
And
says.
it's
My
like,
grace is sufficient for you. My power is made
yeah,
perfect in weakness. Yeah.
exactly. And yet
Amazing.
we still try to cover it up. And here's the thing: we talked about Jesus on the cross, stripped, naked, pinned to the cross, crucified, like crucified love. And yet, and that wasn't a failure. That wasn't weakness. That became strength. Jesus's humility, his meekness of heart, was masculine strength at the same time. Why? Look
Sure.
at the other gospels. No one has spoken like this before. He speaks with
Mm.
authority. Jesus was magnetic, dynamic. Like he had virility and strength. The same one who is meek and humble of heart also flipped over the money changers' tables and
Yeah.
fashioned a whip and drove them out. That's a paradox, but
Sure.
it's because he had the vulnerability, the humility, the weakness of his human nature that he surrendered to the Father. Right? He emptied himself and took the form of a slave.
Sure.
He did that, and it's by letting everything go, all the glory go. I give it up for love, that it's gifted back, and he has power. So we're going to have power. Like we get more masculine power and virility, not by picking ourselves up by our own bootstraps and like I got
Sure.
this, but it's like have your way, and that's what I mean by like that radiant power of humility and holiness that's so stinking attractive today,
Yeah.
so attractive to women when they see it in men, so attractive to other men when they see it in men, that you're like, that's what I want. Oh, here's my crucifix right here. Like, here it is. I was staring at it the whole time. Like
Yeah.
super abundant power, fruitfulness, virility, uh, by this gift of self. Like that's it, the gift of self. Please God help us to become better gifts this way.
Yeah.
It's going to be that's the culture of life, the civilization of love that John Paul II predicted and prophesied. And it's by us, particularly men, in our own unique vocation, by like servant of the servants of God, of our families, of our children, and then taking all that we learn in the school of the family and like gifting it back out into the world. And it's going to be so good, so beautiful,
Yeah.
right? So good.
It's the answer, my brother. I truly believe.
It
You're
is.
the one that
It is.
introduced me to TOB. I mean, it was such a gift to go work at Cardinal and in the Rise program with you. And I really take when I look back at that experience in my life, I go, I can see clearly a point where I was doing the things. I was reading scripture every day. I was going to daily mass. I was going through the motions, but my life really, I could tell you, changed in a different direction because of
Mm,
what you just said. I was attracted to another man's humility and to another man's surrender to God, and I'm talking about you, and please take that, is the truth. It was in
right.
that
Praise
moment that
God.
I said, like, I don't know that I've ever met somebody like him. And I don't know
Mm,
that I've ever known what I want to be like, but it's pretty close to that. And I mean that.
mm.
You're my dear friend, and I love you, Bill. I'm not scared to say it. See, that's vulnerable. I love you, Bill. But but
Too,
no,
brother. Thank
I
you.
would say that the theology of the body, and this is not to just plug what you're doing or where you're working for, but like
Sure.
that teaching changed my life. Just and it wasn't like I've never been to a retreat. I've never been to a week long thing.
Right.
I've never read the entire theology of the body, put together. But I have been around someone who lives it, and it
Mm,
is such a and lives it in the way that it was meant to be, that it was taught by Saint John Paul II. So like I could tell you for a fact that has been one of the greatest gifts in my life. And if you're somebody that's
mm,
listening that you haven't spent any time in the TOB and you've been told that it's all about sex and all that stuff, that it gets pigeonholed into a corner. It's not. It
mm.
is about sex. It's about male and female. It's not just about the the interaction. But
AKA
if you
human life.
right, that's
Yeah.
right, aka human life. So if you haven't spent any time in it, please look into it. I mean, Saint John Paul II was such a gift to us, period. But that particular teaching, I think, has more relevancy in the world now than it ever has
Oh yeah.
before. And Bill,
Oh
you
yeah.
were such a wonderful instructor of it. And I want to give you a couple minutes here to talk about anything you guys are doing there, any upcoming
Sure.
stuff, and just tell people where they can find more about you and where they can
Yeah.
find more about what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, John. And
Yeah.
it's not. Thank you so much for having me on to just talk as a brother. And
Yeah.
it's all mutual, bro. It's all mutual. Um, so our institute, and this is the part where it might sound like a commercial, but it's not.
Sure.
Everything we just talked about for the last 30 minutes or so, we have an institute where we do retreats. So year long. I'm teaching one next month, a Theology of the Body 1 course. I have one in January as well. We teach throughout the year, 5-day immersions in John Paul II's thought, Theology of the Body. And it's a retreat. We've got daily mass, adoration, confession. You got people from around the country and the world. We've had over 60 countries come to our institute, just to the in-person classes and well beyond. And what we do is we just put ourselves before the Lord. We dig deep into the rich theology of our faith and the philosophy, but don't get scared. Like, it's all practically applied. Like, what does this mean? We break open the word. And I mean, I've been teaching for 10 years now at the Institute, the courses. I am constantly learning. Every time I teach, I learn something new. Every time I give the course, because you just say, Lord, have your way. Lord, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And I can't say enough. We've had high school kids to bishops, every vocation, every age, people coming on board and just being formed. And I really feel like we're at the center. As John Paul II would say, what we're doing is at the center of the great struggle between good and evil, between life and death, between love and all that's opposed to love. The Lord's got big plans for this. And, you shared, John, being touched by the teaching. It continues to rock my world. I've been intently studying it for 20 years.
Sure.
It continues every stinking day to challenge me, to inspire me. And I see the golden key in John Paul II's thought. Like, I can't say enough about the teaching. You're going to need another half hour because it literally is the golden key to understand all the crud that's going on in our culture today. It's all about the gift and sign of human sexuality. You're being a husband and father and a man, a brother and a son. Same for me.
Yeah.
Our dear sisters listening, your femininity, what it means. We're talking about the meaning of human life. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bill, man, that's beautiful. And I don't know, you there you go. You popped over to Skype for a minute. You turned into a big S. So,
gosh,
Bill,
okay.
thank you so much. I mean, like I said, you've been a gift in my life. You know, I love you and Rebecca and the kids, and give them all our best, folks. If you want to know more about Bill, you can look up the TOB Institute. You can go to the retreats and things up there that he mentioned. He also is the what would you say? Co-writer of Rise? Co-author, excuse me.
Yeah.
See, you're so much more intelligent than me. I said writer, you said author. But but he is the co-author of the Rise 30-Day Challenge. I spent a lot of time in my life, a couple of years there, going out and helping to bring that gift to men. It truly is a gift. Krista Fannick's taking it over now. It's part of Real Life Catholic. So you can go out and find that there and really see more of Bill's story and just the wonderful work he's done for men. And Bill, it's just such an honor. I couldn't have a guest on, and the first guest and it not be you.
Thanks, brother.
I knew it needed to be us. So, folks, if you want to catch more, we do have more of this interview. It's going to be exclusive for our patrons. We're going to be talking about some cool stuff on the back end of this. Bill and I are both fans of like Star Wars and the Marvel Universe, and we're going to weave some Christianity into all that. Really kind of nerd out for all you guys that are and ladies that are patrons. So if you want to see that, you can go to www.patreon.com/pewministries. Become a patron. You can do that for as low as $5 a month or as much as you want, but it all goes to being able to support what we're trying to do here, which is have the technology and the things we need to conduct these sort of interviews and just to continue to further out God's gospel into the message into the world. So we thank you for all that, Bill. Thank you for your time. Love you, brother, and we'll see you real soon.
You too, bro.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.